this is already video 18, and as a long-standing promise, this video is supposed to tackle the introductory paragraph. And so what I did here is I took note of the TIS questions that actually came out at the beginning of the year 2019. So you will see the January 4 question, that was the first Saturday of the year, and then a week after that it's the January 11 question, and on the third week it's the January 18 question. So I will what I intend to do here is to make 3 introductory paragraphs on these 3 questions. So you will see on January 4, TV channels show more male sports programs. That's a proposition, and then the prompt is, why is this? So you have to outline a number of reasons why this is so. And the second question is, should the TV channels give equal time for both men's and women's sports? So basically this is a 2-part question, or what we now call as the C style. And since you can answer these 2 questions straightforwardly and one-sidedly, then these questions are actually what we call as the C1 style, or one-sided questions. You can just answer them straightforwardly. For January 11, we now suddenly come up with this question: children nowadays are mandated to study difficult subjects such as mathematics or philosophy in school. And then there should be a period there, and then there are people who think that these should be an option rather than compulsory. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So for the January 11 question, this is now clearly a crossover. So on one side of the issue, you see that there are opinions that say children should be mandated to study difficult subjects, and then on the other side of the question, you can see that there are people who think that these subjects should be optional rather than compulsory. So regardless of the fact that the question is to what extent do you agree or disagree, it doesn't depart from the truth that you have to answer this question as a crossover. So if you remember the discussions for crossover essays, you only have 4 options. It's either the A2 style, the B1 style, the B2 style, and the B3 style. Those are the only 4 options. For January 18, the week after that, you now have another crossover. Some people believe that in order to be successful in sports, one must be physically strong. That's one side of the issue, and then we now cross over to the other side. However, others argue that mental strength is more important, and discuss both views and give your opinion. So again, even though again, it now can clearly be seen that this is a crossover from the prompt itself, which is discuss both views and give your opinion. So for January 11 and January 18, what you had were 2 successive crossover questions. Okay, so we will not discuss how to tackle these particular essays, but what we will do here is I will now be demonstrating how to create introductory paragraphs for these 3 question prompts. So as a reminder, there are 4 introductory elements. Take note that of these 4 introductory elements, only one of them can be considered as compulsory or mandatory, and the other 3 elements are merely stylistic. So the first element is what we call as the hook statement. So the hook statement is now defined as a brief statement on the central topic of the question prompt. So for example, for January 4, you will see TV shows show more male sports programs. So TV channels show more male sports programs. So the central topic there is really all about sports. Or you can also talk about the clear preference of viewers towards male sports programs. So that is, you just make a brief statement on that central topic. For January 11, this is now all about education. You can talk about children's education as a central topic. Just a brief statement on the importance of children's education, or alternately you can talk about difficult subjects in school as a central topic, and just a brief statement on that. And then for January 18, we can see that some people believe that in order to be successful in sport, one must be physically strong. However, others argue that mental strength is more important. So again, this is all about sports. So just a brief statement about sports. So take note that the hook is just a stylistic element. So it's not really mandatory. It's maybe we can fine-tune the definition further by saying that it's an optional stylistic brief statement on the central topic of the question prompt. Okay. From the word itself, hook, what we can see is the objective of the hook is just to hook the viewer into reading the essay. So the statement has to be very interesting, something that will catch their attention. And now we arrive at the next element, which is now what we call as the paraphrase. Now this one is the sole mandatory element. So we can define it as a mandatory rephrasing of the question prompt. So if, for example, among the 4 elements you just choose the paraphrase, then that's good enough as it is, since it's the only mandatory element. Conversely, even if you had 3 other elements but you missed the paraphrase, then that is now a problematic introduction. So the purpose of the paraphrase is really to educate the reader as to what is the scope of what is the topic that you will be talking about. Remember that the assumption is always that the reader knows nothing about the question prompt that you're about to write. So it is through the paraphrase where you now educate the reader as to exactly what will the essay be discussing. Okay, we will now move on to the next element, which is the forecast statement. So this is another optional element, an optional statement that defines the scope of the discussion about to be made. So in research writing, this is something like the scope and limitations. So it is in the forecast statement where you just inform the reader that what you plan to do. Like I plan to the writer will attempt to discuss both sides of the issue and will arrive at a logical finding or a logical conclusion to this controversy, something like that. So again, that's an optional statement, so you can actually do without it if you wanted to, as well as with the 3 other elements. The 4th element now is what we call as the thesis statement. So from the word itself, it is an optional statement that reveals the opinion of the writer. There, we can define it that way. An optional statement that reveals the opinion of the writer. So again, the thesis statement is quite self-explanatory. You can just say that this is the part where the writer will say whatever his or her opinion is. Okay, so those are the 4 introductory elements, and then again, just to emphasize, it's only the paraphrase that's really the mandatory element here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate how this should work. So let's try to do the January 4 question prompt. So maybe let's do it in a new page over here, there. Okay, so we'll copy paste it there, and then let's just make that bigger. So now I'm about to make my introduction. So Take note, I will just label the elements accordingly, but in the actual essay, you don't need to label it as a hook or the paraphrase or anything like that. So remember, the hook statement is just a brief statement on the central topic of the proposition. So this is really all about sports, so we can just say that sports have always been a huge industry that generates lots of viewership on television there. Okay, now we can move on to the paraphrase. Okay, so the paraphrase is really easy because all you need to do is just rephrase all of this. So we'll just paraphrase this part, and then as regards to the prompt, we'll just paraphrase that when it comes to the forecast statement. So the paraphrase here is, however, notably, it can be notably seen that a vast majority of viewership is focused mainly on male sports programs, while women's coverage do not get as much viewership. Maybe I'll just rephrase that later on in the essay. Alright, so that's now the paraphrase. So as a reader, I now can see where the essay is going. This essay is really going to talk about the tendency of viewers to favor male sports programs. Let's now move on to the forecast statement. So we will just somewhat paraphrase these statements. This essay will investigate the reasons for such, and will analyze as to whether women's sports deserve more attention than their counterpart gender. Okay, and then alright, so with this forecast statement, then the reader now knows where the essay is going to go. So the forecast, by the word itself, it will give you a peek into what the essay is going to look like. And then finally, there's the thesis statement, wherein we can now say that however, as far as this writer is concerned, let's assume that we are in favor of viewership of women's sports. Women have shown equal ability in athleticism, and therefore should be patronized by viewers just as much as men are there. So that is a comprehensive introductory paragraph for the January 4 question. So again, please just note that it's only the paraphrase that's really the mandatory element. So for example, what we can do here is we can, for example, delete all of this, and then let's assume that that's all your introduction is gonna be. You can just simply say, it can be notably seen that the vast majority of viewership is focused mainly on male sports programs, while women's coverage, I'm sorry about the error, do not get as much viewership there. So as it is, that is already sufficient as an introduction. But some people really like fulsome introductory paragraphs, so I don't blame them for such. Personally, I really just use the hook all the time and the paraphrase, and then I just stop there. I really don't like the forecast statements or the thesis statements. To me, the forecast statement is really quite obvious that you're going to be discussing this issue, so I don't really need to know. I don't really need to say it anymore. And then the thesis statement, of course, is the reason why I don't like it is because I'd rather keep the reader in suspense, and I would rather have my opinions categorically stated towards the end of the essay. So let's assume that all of that are in your introductory paragraph. So that's a total of 99 words already. Let's just let's assume that we will delete all these labels, like two words here, and then another 2 words here, and then 5 and 6 words. So that's already 93 words. Okay, and remember, you're only supposed to write a minimum of 250 words. So just from the intro alone, then you're easily gonna breach the 250 word boundary. So let's move on to the next question prompt from January 11. So let's make another series of introductory elements out of that. Let's just copy paste it here. So this time I'm not going to label it accordingly. So okay, so my hook statement is going to talk about education has certainly become a cornerstone of human civilization there, and the education of the future generation certainly becomes of paramount importance. That's a long hook statement by itself. Alright, and then I'm now going into the paraphrase. Having said this, there are now people who argue that difficult subjects such as mathematics or philosophy should only be offered as an elective and not made a compulsory part of the curriculum. And then I'm now moving into the forecast statement. This essay will investigate these conflicting views. In the end, maybe we'll just now segue into the thesis statement. But as far as this writer feels, such subjects should indeed be made available to all learners. Okay, there. So all of that are now the elements of the introduction for that particular question prompt that logged as 78 words. Okay, the 4 elements. And finally, let's now do the January 18 question over here. So it's again another question about sports. So there we go. Some people believe that in order to be successful in sport, one must be physically strong. Okay. So let's have another hook statement on sports. Sports do entail and ensure physical strength, which therefore makes them ideal for all proponents in the preservation of physical health there. And then we're now going into the paraphrase. There are, however, people who feel that physical abilities in sports are as important as mental toughness. That's your very short paraphrase. And then we're now going into the forecast statement. The essay will investigate the conflicting claims, and then this is now the thesis statement. But this writer feels that both attributes contribute equally to sporting success. Okay, let's just fit that all into a screen so that you can take a screenshot if you need to. There. Alright. So here is your hook statement. There's your hook statement over there. And then what's next is the paraphrase over here. There. And then you now have the forecast statement over there, and you now have the thesis statement over here. So these are the 4 elements. There are really variants of all of these elements of the introduction, and you can see them in many model essays, even over the internet. So basically it really is just these 4 elements. And again, let me emphasize, really it's just all about the paraphrase. Maybe you should just paraphrase and that's the end of it, and then just go to the gist of the essay, which are the body paragraphs and of course the conclusion. Alright, so that having been said, thank you very much. If there are questions, do just feel free to posit them in the comment boxes below, and I will reply to them as promptly as I can. Don't forget to click subscribe so that you will be updated whenever new videos will come out. The succeeding videos will now be talking about task 1 writing. So thank you everybody, and have a good day.